if between that period, the candidates who feel, oh, INEC may have disqualified us unduly, go to court, and then the court makes a decision, then we still have time before the election. But the idea of saying, oh, the party decision is final and proceed to election, and then tomorrow we are in court, upturning the will of the people becomes for me a major problem. So I agree very much with Itodo. INEC should have that power, but in a way that it cannot be by fiat, so it is not abused.
Okay, let's bring in Prof again, not necessarily on the issue of powers that INEC should possess this time around, but on the electoral spending. Nigeria is known to be one of the African nations where a humongous amount of money is being spent during electioneering campaigns. And of course, even in the registration of those who wish to contest for different positions of authority, like the governorship elections, National Assembly elections, of course, presidential election, and what have you. But we have a benchmark for presidential election, which is 15 billion naira. Is that on the high side? And if not, what kind of adjustment will you expect, or clause will you expect to be in the current reform that is going on?
First and foremost, I think generally or globally, elections is an expensive venture globally. In Nigeria, unfortunately, the most lucrative industry is the political industry. The democratic industry in Nigeria is the most lucrative. If you want to invest in, if you have 15 billion that you want to invest in Nigeria, don't invest it in the economic sector, because the returns on investment is abysmally poor and there is no certainty from the economic point of view. But if you invest it in the political or democratic sector and you succeed, you are able to get that office, you are very certain and sure of your returns on investment in a multiple terms. So is 15 billion expensive to campaign for Nigerian presidency? Well, ideally, if you're talking about idealistic thinking, it's expensive. But in reality, it's not. Because if you look at the demands of a candidate, as a presidential candidate in Nigeria, you must tour at least 36 states of the federation. And you're not touring that states alone. You must carry the national campaign committee of your party, your friends, and you fly by air, you lodge in hotels, you feed, you understand? You provide security, and these security are not free. You pay for the security. You pay for coverage, media, whatever. Some of them go, even Nigeria, you include the Nigerian spiritual factor there, the so-called malams and the pastors who pray for you. So see, if you factor this thing, at worst, if you put half a billion per state times 36, it's more than 15 billion. Yeah. And that is all that I mentioned, excluding the, what do you call it, the PR, the democratic PR in Nigeria, where you settle traditional rulers, religious leaders, elders in the society, you understand, etc., etc.
Even those who will be at the rally.
At the rally, you mobilize them, you package them. So you see, Kerian, to be sincere, we shouldn't be penny wise, pound foolish democratically. Nigerian democracy is one of the most expensive in the whole world.
Yeah, it is expensive,
yes.
And this question is going to Sami Todo. Sami Todo, you could also make this and one of that your closing thought, because we are pressed for time now. It is expensive because it also feeds corruption, and corruption feeds into it. And part of the return on investment that Professor Sadiq Abba was talking about has to do with corruption. So there's simplicity. Now, I'm wondering, in the process of this reform, how much of an input we got from the anti-corruption agencies into campaign financing limits or campaign financing regulations. If it is left so open-ended, 15 billion, who can donate to a campaign finance and who is prohibited from making donations to campaign finance? Part of the Corporate and Allied Matters Act, Companies and Allied Matters Act, parts of it are clear on this, but elsewhere, what do we know? So that monies just come from whatever and any source. Nobody asks questions. You win, and then, of course, you have a return on investment. How can we balance the desire for attenuating corruption in our society with the fact that we recognize that elections are expensive, but at the same time, you don't have to bring in dirty money?
So this dilemma is addressed in the electoral law because it also introduces limits that limits to donations that individuals can make or even institutions can make. As you know, within our laws, it is prohibited, to receive foreign.
Oh shit! Kieran, there's a freeze there on the Zoom connection.
He's back now.
Okay, all right, back. Sam, you're back.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so within the current piece of proposed legislation, there are limitations to donations that individuals can make. We have it in the extant law, but also it prohibits, foreign funding for our elections. I think that what we need to look at is first ensure that we've got realistic spending limits. But no matter how we peg thresholds to spending limits, if the institution that is responsible for monitoring and tracking and prosecuting offenders is not strengthened, then we will just have these provisions as mere letters in our electoral law. And INEC is vested with the responsibility of tracking and monitoring campaign finances. And we have said this. The Justice Ways Committee's reports have also said this, and it is out there, the public in public consciousness that INEC is overburdened. So should INEC have that responsibility of monitoring and tracking campaign expenditure? My sense is that responsibility should be taken off the commission. That's why the EFCC and the ICPC have been involved in recent elections in tracking vote buying. I don't know to what extent they've arrested people who have violated, this law. There are cases, in a public where we know chieftains of political parties were publicly, doling out funds or even transferring funds that under questionable circumstances. And I think that, yes, let's have this law, but I would be very interested in how the institutions that are saddled with the responsibility to implement this law and hold defaulters to account is strengthened to perform that function, because we need to demonetize our electoral process. So we create a level playing field for everybody. So we also curb, incidents of electoral corruption.
All right, Samson Itudo, I just hope that we could have more time to delve into further intricacies of this particular topic, because of course we have been unable to exhaust it, if you ask me, because there are certain issues left untouched. At this point we're pressed for time, and so we call it a day on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, but not without appreciating all our guests who actually made their valid contributions to the conversation. First, Oluole Osaze Uzi, we thank you indeed for coming as always. He's the former Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC. Temipure Allison, we also appreciate you. He's the Head of Programs and the Center for Democracy and Development. Now, Director Yaga Africa, Samson Itudo, thank you indeed for joining us via Zoom. And also, it's been so interesting to have Sadiq Abba, Professor Sadiq Abba, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the University of Abuja. Prof, also thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right. So that's it for today on Good Morning Nigeria. Tune in again tomorrow.